To talk about human rights in South Africa, how they're observed, but of course to look into the work of the Chapter 9 institution, the South African Human Rights Commission. We're joined now by Advocate Tseliso, Thipanyane, who is the Chief Executive Officer of the SAHRC. A very good evening to you, and thank you so much for taking the time to speak to us, Advocate Thipanyane. Much appreciated. Perhaps let's just first start with the annual trends report that you normally release, to just give us a sense of where you put South Africa and the kind of challenges it's facing with regards to the work that you do.
Good evening to you and to your viewers. Yes, our report on trends analysis basically highlights the type of complaints we've received from the public as far as human rights violations are concerned. And out of the top 5, we have issues of unfair discrimination, racism, discrimination against people with different sexual orientation. We have problems also around just administration action. We have problems around labor matters. We also have issues around socioeconomic rights, which are including second. So we've also seen an increase in the number of complaints we've received. So the report does highlight worrying concerns about the continued trend of human rights violations in our country, 25 years into our constitution and 28 years into our democracy.
So I understand that the number of complaints that you've received have gone up by a figure of about 13% a year or so. Is this because of the increasing incidence of some of these complaints, or is it because of the presence of advocacy that people know that they have rights and they can come to the Commission to ask you to investigate?
Well, it's a combination of things. Certainly the issue of advocacy, but we're also seeing an increase in the violation of human rights. We have increasing levels of poverty, levels of violence also increasing. And as the President has also mentioned, we are seeing also increasing levels of inequalities in our country, which by itself, it's a manifestation of the past racial order and the inability of the state to deal with some of these issues. We are seeing also problems really around local government, failing local government in terms of water and sanitation, many potholes in the road. We're seeing high levels of corruption in our country and mismanagement of state institutions like ESCOM, hence the many power cuts. So, yes, we're not really in a good space at this point in time. Okay,
so we'll come to the issue of redress, and I know there is one report for many people that is still top of mind, and we'll get to that, the July unrest, which is, you've been holding hearings over it. But I want to start with, I see according to your report that the most number of complaints listed per province were received from the Western Cape, Gauteng, and then followed by Limpopo and the Free State. If you could just give us the nature of the complaints in these provinces and what is available in terms of institutional redress for those who have made such complaints.
Yeah, it will again be issues of race, issues of socioeconomic rights in all various forms, issues of just administration action, and also issues of labor violations. And I need to point out that this is just, we are a very small organization, 180 people. So, the complaints we get are just a small component of the number of human rights violations in the country. There are also other bodies which deal with complaints like this, like Public Protector, Gender Commission. So we're simply reporting what comes to us. And as you can see also in the report, we've gone to court about 69 times. In defense of victims of human rights violations.
I'm quite intrigued to see, just in terms of your top 3 rights violations that remain constant, that just administrative action, which involves non-responsiveness or delays by authorities to provide basic services. We've just been speaking to Abahlali Basemjondolo, who was speaking not only about the lack of access to housing, but the corruption around that, and they were claiming that their members are being killed because of the activism that they're involved in to bring this to light. Does this tally with some of what's coming before you? I mean, people are living in abject poverty in South Africa, and some of them just actually seem resigned to it.
Yes, 2 weeks ago in Alexander, we did a local inspection in Alexander. It's actually quite scary, where you still see sewage running around the streets, people throwing rubbish in the river, terrible housing, congestion, and it's actually not a picture which applies in many parts of the country. So 25 years later, or 28 years later, the values in our constitution, the rights to housing, water and sanitation, are still not being enjoyed by many South Africans, partly due to high levels of corruption, mismanagement of our economy, and also the arrogance by some by public officials, who don't care about the values of a responsive and accountable government, and also they don't care much about their commitment to ensure that the vision of our country, as far as the values which enshrine our constitution, are being given effect to.
And you've obviously also been involved in various hearings with regards to access to water. We know the Hammanskraal area was just shocking, some of the reports that were coming. Why do some of these things continue, these situations persist in South Africa? Because when you just look at COVID-19 sanitation, the poor were saying, we can't fight this disease if we don't have access to the very thing that you're saying will help us fight it off. And it is just unimaginable that so many of our people still live in places where there is no piped water, there are still pit latrines, etc., etc.
We had a hearing in Vaal River where municipality was simply throwing raw sewage in Vaal River and destroying the river. We did a hearing in Alexander. Then a couple of hearings in many parts of the country around lack of water and sanitation by local government. So for me, this highlights that we have inadequate system to hold those who have been entrusted with service delivery to account. So Parliament itself could do a better job. Government itself could also ensure that public servants who are being paid to do this work really do their work and do nothing and do more about that. But also it means bodies like us, chapter 9 institutions can also be a bit more effective in ensuring that these things do not happen and that people are held to account. But lastly, it's also important for the people of this country who are shareholders of companies in South Africa to be able to hold public officials to account. We are running government through their taxes. We are elected into power by the people of this country, and we are supposed to be accountable to them and be responsive to their needs.
Inequality in the areas of education and health is something that you yourselves of an organization have pointed out as well. Just give us a sense of where are the failures in the system, because the whole point of having a constitution such as ours in divided and segregated societies such as these basic needs would be dealt with.
It is actually very scary. We are basically having two systems of education in our country. One for the rich, which is well run, better organized, and one for the poor, where you don't have adequate classrooms, you don't have adequate sanitation. There's massive violence in those schools. Look at the reports by the South African Council of Educators. Over 50,000 violations of human rights have been in our schools. We see learners fighting and killing each other and stuff like that. So this is also a highlight also of the unequal societies we have. One rich, one poor, and largely the rich one is white, the poor one is black. So 25 years later, we're still failing as a country to transform our country to ensure that there is equitable distribution of wealth, that all South Africans are able to enjoy adequately the rights enshrined in our constitution, the rights which many of our people fought for many years in this country.
Is this then the sense that you got what was at the center of what we saw in South Africa last year in July. For many, it was unprecedented. It was called many things. Some called it the food riots. All of these issues, did they come to represent all of these challenges that you are expressing now that we still face as a country? As in, did you get a sense as the Human Rights Commission that it is frustration with all of these issues?
No, certainly. While there were sinister forces behind the unrest, but they also created a space where people can vent out their frustration. It's actually quite sad and scary that, ordinary people were looting their malls, destroying our economy, which they need itself. So, and that's why we're having this hearing to say, let's also look at the underlying causes. And certainly we cannot avoid the fact that, our people did break the law. Our people went and looted, not just because they're hungry, but also, if they don't feel that the state cares for them, then there is no compassion for the state. So for them, looting and destroying their own country economy is a manifestation of that. So a lot of work has to be done for us as South Africans to really appreciate this country of ours and work hard to ensure that, we do build a better society for our children and grandchildren. So clearly the issues of poverty, unemployment does lead to frustration. But of course, there were people who had other motives behind this unrest.
Right. The commissioners also said that there is a lack of due and proper recognition of the Commission's role in vindicating human rights of South Africans. Why is that?
Well, if you look at Section 181 of the Constitution, there's an obligation on all organs of state to support the integrity and effectiveness of Chapter 9 institutions. And over the past 25 years, there's not been adequate support of the work we are doing as Chapter 9 institutions by government officials who have taken an oath that they will uphold the Constitution and support these bodies. We are small bodies. Our role is simply to ensure that, government does its work. We create a space for people who feel they have got nowhere to go. And therefore, we could do much more if there was a better support and cooperation by both Parliament and the Executive, but as well as people of this country.
Do you feel
After all, we're here to serve the people of this country.
Do you feel that there have been instances where the Commission itself has been attacked for doing its work?
Yes, and not supported. That's why we go to court 69 times. That's why sometimes we have to subpoena government officials instead of people simply cooperating and providing us with information. We won, and this really undermines the work we're doing. The commission, as well as other chapter institutions, the AG, Public Protector, IC, should be protected because our role is to strengthen constitutional democracy, to ensure that there is stability in our country and that people in this country can really enjoy the rights they have in the Bill of Rights.
Thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it. Chief Executive Officer of the South African Human Rights Commission, Advocate Tseliso Thipanyane, speaking to us there about the Chapter 9 institution's role and the work that it's been doing here in South Africa as we reflect on Human Rights Day here in the country. Right, we're going to take a quick break. Still back with more news. Don't go back.